Hi guys! In this video, I'll be analysing Carol Ann Duffy's poem, Before You Were Mine. It's a beautiful, touching poem in which a daughter remembers her mother, and it's a poem that's packed with stylistic and structural details for a rewarding analysis. So here we go. By the way, please do give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to this channel if you find my content in any way useful. This will really help me carry on making great videos for you all, and I'd massively appreciate it as always. So let's start with the poem's title. Before You Were Mine gives us the impression of being a romantic poem, with the possessive form of the word me, being mine, connoting a relationship in which the speaker seems to have possession of and therefore more power over the you in question. As the poem unfolds though, we realise that it's actually a daughter speaking to her mother imaginarily, because her mother has already passed away. The tone throughout the poem is somewhat ironic because the speaker sounds more like the mother than the daughter, using terms of endearment like sweetheart and addressing her mother with a commanding directness conveyed through the frequent use of the second person pronoun you. Throughout the poem, the speaker presents a series of vignettes about her mother's youth, some imagined, others remembered. At the end of the poem, we get the impression of a daughter who wants to remember her mother not just as a mother, but as a bubbly, vibrant individual whose life was a lot more exciting and glamorous before domesticity set in. Motherhood was simply part of her mother's identity. The whole of the woman is a lot more dynamic and multi-dimensional, and this is a very important point to remember about the characterization of the mother in the poem. Now, one of the more striking things about the poem's opening is the speaker's specific allusion to two names, Maggie McGeaney and Jean Duff. Now, these aren't famous people, but are instead her mother's friends in her younger, unmarried days. The specificity ascribed to two seemingly random characters may seem odd at first, but it suggests the speaker's deep memory of her mother's past, which her mother is likely to have relayed herself. For the speaker, we see that every detail about her mum's past matters, down to the names of her friends, and this reinforces just how precious her mum's history is to her. The words McGeaney and Jean also share in the assonance with the three in the next line that reads, "The three of you bend from the waist," with the E sound in McGeaney, Jean, three, highlighting the similarity between her mother and her pals as these young, vivacious women once upon a time. But the stanza ends with a cultural allusion to Marilyn, who is, of course, as we would know, Marilyn Monroe, the blonde bombshell, sex symbol, and 50s film icon, indicating that the aspirational woman figure back in her mother's youth was a vibrant, liberated personality. As fragments of her mother's past gradually come together, Duffy uses metonymy and synecdoche to reflect these parts and pieces of imagined and recalled memory. Now remember that metonymy and synecdoche are both devices that use the part to stand in for the whole. The difference is that the part in synecdoche must be physically attached to the whole it refers to. Now, the examples of these would include the Thousand Eyes, which is a synecdoche for admiring crowds, the Fizzy, which is a metonym for champagne, but also symbolic of her mother's effervescence, and Movie Tomorrow's The Right Walk Home Could Bring, which is a metonym for a successful first date. The ambiguous remark, "I knew you would dance like that," is also interesting, because it leads us to think, like what? Well, perhaps this is the speaker's way of suggesting her mother's erstwhile coquettishness, which would have faded away with the onset of motherhood. In any case, the message is clear. Before the speaker came along, her mother must have been a much more lively, spontaneous, and spunky woman. As the poem crosses its halfway mark and into the third stanza, we get the sense that the speaker harbours a slight sense of guilt over her mother's transformation, and also that this guilt is mixed with a longing to see her mother once again. Now, there are several clues to this reading. First, the rhetorical question in line 11, "The decade ahead of my loud, possessive yell was the best one, eh?" is sarcastic, The implication here being that upon the speaker's birth, her mother had to give up her past life as a fun-loving individual and dedicate all her time to raising the child. The loud, possessive yell is also an example here of Synecdoche, but this part of the speaker as infant turned out to usurp the whole, not of the infant herself, but of her mother's attention and life. This official arrival of motherhood is then sharpened by the juxtaposition with "my hand in those high-heeled red shoes," relics. The imagery of the daughter's hand being in her mother's dancing shoes carries on this idea of intrusion, while the shoes as relics symbolize the death of her mother's carefree youth, as of course the word relics connote bodily remains, but also recalls the actual death of her mother in the present. To the speaker, though, it seems that both symbolic and literal death are but two sides of the same coin, which is suggested by the same sound of eh in the word red and relics. The spectre of her mum remains in the speaker's mind, as we see from the phrase, "Your ghost clatters toward me over George Square till I see you clear as scent." Now there's also the use of synaesthesia here, with the sonic reference of clatters mixed with the phrase "clear as scent," which intermingles the visual and the olfactory. The resulting suggestion is that her mother's memory permeates every aspect of the daughter's current existence, which highlights the speaker's longing to once again feel her mother's physical presence. As we reach the final stanza, the onomatopoeia of cha-cha-cha syncs up with the primary metrical rhythm of this poem, which is in turn anapestic and amphibrachic. Both trisyllabic feet resemble a waltzy beat, which fits nicely with the motif of dance that threads across the poem. There's also, of course, the reference to the word waltz in the final line, which reinforces this motif. Note that her mother would, quote, "teach me the steps on the way home from mass, stamping stars from the wrong pavement." The mass reference is significant here because it reaffirms the tension between this idea of conforming to routine versus the idea of giving in to spontaneity, which is presented in this poem as the mother's natural disposition. Routine implies duty and obligation, whereas spontaneity allows for freedom and the pursuit of selfhood. The former befits a mother, while the latter seems better suited to a single woman. And what compelled her mother to transition from spontaneity to routine, the speaker seems to imply, was the birth of the daughter. Further reinforcing this tension between obligation and freedom is the contrast between rhythmic variation and formal regularity. Despite the semblance of order projected by the forcing canes, within each stanza there's considerable diversity in metrical foot, which is guided by anapests and amphibrachs, but also interspersed with iambs, trochees, dactyls, and even Bacchus. In fact, the first two lines illustrate this well, as it reads, "I'm 10 years away from the corner you laugh on," which is an example of the amphibrachic tetrameter, or "with your pals Maggie McGeanie and Jean Duff," which is a mix of anapest, trochee, amphibrach, and Bacchus. And later, "I remember my hands in those high-heeled red shoes," relics, which is a mix of the anapestic and the trochaic rhythm. Underneath the shell of domestic order and succumbing to maternal duty then, we see that there bubbles the mother's desire for a freer, more unpredictable, and more spontaneous way of life. And despite the speaker's remorse over her mother's loss of vivacious youth, the overall impression in this poem is that she remembers and celebrates her mother's past self, and is very proud of it as a daughter. So there you have it, guys. I hope this gives you a detailed insight into Duffy's wonderful poem. Comment below with any thoughts or questions you may have, either about this poem or any other poems you're studying. And please make sure to like this video and subscribe to this channel for more useful English Lit resources in the future. I also have a blog post on this poem compared alongside Simon Armitage's poem Mother Any Distance, which some of you will also be studying for your Love and Relationships GCSE poetry cluster. So you can go ahead and check out the link to that blog post in the description below. And also I've covered quite a lot of advanced metrical terms in this poem. So if you need any help with understanding what those are, you can go ahead and check out some of the useful resources that I will also provide links to in the description box below. Okay? I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!